Okay, here we go with day 2 of U.S. History Review for MME. First up, we're going to start with the U.S. becoming a world power. See some notable people up on the page, or up on the screen. Most notable, or most important, is probably Teddy Roosevelt. Remember, he played a big role in the Spanish-American War, where the U.S. was really kind of at odds with Spain. Our ship, the USS Maine, blew up down in Havana Harbor. There was a huge outcry, even though the Spanish had nothing to do with it. It was a boiler malfunction. There was a big outcry in the United States that we had to go to war and avenge this. So we ended up declaring war on Spain. Teddy Roosevelt, remember, he led that group of guys, the Rough Riders, kind of a ragtag bunch. Teachers, miners, farmers, cowboys all mixed in on it. But they charged up San Juan Hill in Cuba, and he was really kind of played a big role in the U.S. victory down there. Another reason why the U.S. got involved in this fight was because of yellow journalism. That's really exaggerated news reporting, where we were blaming the Spanish for everything, really trying to make them out to be bad guys. A lot of the big newspaper men in the country, like William Randolph Hearst, who is pictured down in the bottom corner there, was responsible for that. Moving on. Around the same time, actually right after the Spanish-American War, when Teddy Roosevelt becomes president, he pursues building a canal through Panama. You can see by the map there why that would be a really good idea and valuable to the United States. It's going to cut shipping time down from New York to San Francisco, so the East Coast to the West Coast, down to about a third of what it had previously been. So it's very important for us to get that. A lot of people accused him of kind of being a bully in getting this done because he was pushing around the governments down in Central and South America, caused a revolution when they wouldn't let him build, but he was able to get that accomplished, and it was really a big bonus for the United States. Next, moving on, Hawaii. How we got Hawaii as a state. Basically what it was, the queen there, the traditional Hawaiian queen, when she came to power and her father had passed away, she wanted to get the Americans off the island. She was really kind of anti-American, thought we had been, these American fruit farmers were becoming too pushy and powerful, gained too much influence. Because the Americans there felt threatened, these fruit farmers, they basically had a revolution on the island. They overthrew the queen. The guy that led it, with the crazy looking beard up top, is Sanford Dole, the guy that started the Dole Fruit Company. He really kind of, led, was the figurehead of this revolution. Afterwards, these guys were worried that the British or French or some other European power would come in and try to dominate them, or even the Japanese. So they applied for statehood, and the U.S. decided to annex Hawaii, and that was how Hawaii got on its path to statehood. Moving on, Teddy Roosevelt, a policy that he had that many of you probably remember, hopefully, when he was president. He practiced something in foreign policy called big stick diplomacy. A couple different political cartoons here, TR running around with a big stick. Essentially what that means is, it all comes from that African proverb, speak softly, carry a big stick. The big stick is supposed to be like your navy or your military. So you're saying don't go around threatening everybody, but if somebody crosses you or gets out of line, use your military to get them back in line. Basically, you have a real firm hand in foreign policy. Now we're moving into World War I. Remember, initially, the U.S. wanted to stay out of the war. The reason the war broke out in Europe was the variety of factors: nationalism, militarism, different alliances secret alliances had been developed over the years there. Basically, it was a situation where all of these European countries had built up very big militaries. They had alliances and secret pacts with their neighbors, and everybody was very cocky and thought that they were the best. So everybody was looking for a fight. If any fight broke out between any two countries, it was going to start pulling all these alliances into play, and it was going to spread rapidly across Europe. U.S. soldiers initially, we wanted to keep our guys out of it. We wanted to trade with both sides so we could profit off the conflict. After the war had been going on for about 3.5 years, we eventually got pushed in on the side of the Allies because the Germans started sinking our ships. Remember, the trench life for the soldiers was awful. what I'm showing you right here. Trenches were kind of muddy and dirty, guys sleeping all over. You could potentially have dead bodies down there with you in the trenches. The area between the trenches is called no man's land. That's where you're facing off against the German soldiers. They're probably 100 to 200 yards away from you, and you're taking pot shots back and forth all the time, occasionally getting the order to charge across and try to break through the German lines. The power of our government definitely grew during the war. The government was forcing the American people to ration so that we could conserve resources to win the war. Remember, because so many men got drafted up and were over there doing the fighting, women played a big role because they stepped into a lot of the factory jobs. This was the last, well, I'm sorry, not the last war, one of the last wars where the U.S. Army was segregated. We did have black soldiers, however in this war they were not allowed to see combat. It was the last war that black soldiers were only used in support roles, but also minorities played a big role in helping out on the home front, raising productivity in the factories. Moving on, while the war was going on, something happened across the nation called the Red Scare. Basically, in the middle of the war, Russia kind of imploded. Their government just collapsed. They overthrew the Tsar, and the communists came to power in what was known as the Bolshevik Revolution. That created a big panic here in America, where we were worried that potentially the communists might have a big overthrow here too and come to power and throw out our democracy and republic so that we'd go to some sort of communist regime. Because of this, because so many people were panicking, sedition acts were passed during the war where it was illegal to talk bad about your country, so it really violated people's First Amendment rights. Last up, after we end up winning the war and helping the Allies, the British and French to a final victory, our president, President Wilson, who's pictured there, had a plan for peace called the 14 Points, where he really kind of wanted to forgive and forget and just heal the wounds of the war. The British and French had a very different idea because they had suffered so much more. They wanted to punish Germany. Also, our president had an idea for something called the League of Nations. He hoped that that would be a place where all nations could come together and peacefully resolve their differences. Unfortunately, the United States was not able to join because the Senate, which was from a different political party, the Senate was basically made up of Republicans at the time, had a strong Republican majority, and our President Wilson was a Democrat. Because of internal political problems, we were not allowed to join the League of Nations, even though it was our president's idea to create it. So that made it kind of weak, and it didn't survive very long after the war. And obviously didn't really fulfill its purpose because about 20 years later, World War II breaks out.